Good evening and welcome to the University of Maryland. I am Bonnie Thornton-Dill. I am Dean of the College of Arts and Humanities, and this is the second event in our 2017-2018 Arts and Humanities Dean's Lecture Series, and we're so thrilled to see so many of you here. Over the years, we have sought to make this series dynamic and timely by inviting guest speakers to engage in thought-provoking conversations, lectures, and presentations about important issues and ideas addressed in their work. We have invited them to share stories that inform our understanding about contemporary issues and challenges. And our aim has and continues to be promoting community, generating, stimulating conversations that encourage us to think in critical and creative ways, and facilitating those processes both on campus and in the surrounding area. In planning the series this year, we felt compelled to speak to the issues that are troubling this campus, our nation, and the world. Ideological polarization that is stoked by fear and ethnocentrism and often expressed as hate and bias. Our themed series, therefore, is an effort to confront these issues head-on by bringing us together to consider rhetoric and actions that sow bigotry and malice. So this series this year is organized around the theme, Courageous Conversations, Arts and Humanities Resists Hate and Bias. This season features 3 speakers whose work confronts these difficult issues through personal, political, and historical frames of reference. 2 things inspired the title for this series. First, a TED Talk by the first speaker in the series, Theo Wilson, who had gone underground online posing as a white supremacist. And he talked about the need for courageous conversations. It takes courage to speak with honesty and to listen patiently to views that are antithetical to our own. It also takes courage to name recurrent themes in American history that many would like to forget or believe have been eradicated. By using the term resist, we declare that we are actively engaged in pushing back against the sentiments and actions that generate hate and bias. We are seeking to be proactive, not just reactive, in creating constructive ways to address difference. Our campus is committed to engaging these difficult issues, and this series is among a number of college and campus-wide efforts to promote listening, dialogue, and action around diversity and inclusion. Our speaker for tonight is famed civil and human rights activist Bobby Seale, which is why you're all here, I know, founding chairman and national organizer of the Black Panther Party. And in his talk, Resistance from the 60s to Trump, he will discuss hate and bias through the lens of a man who has lived on the front lines of activism and against discrimination and inequality. His is a lesson in living history for many of us. His talk will be followed by a panel discussion with 3 University of Maryland professors, and they will all be introduced to you later. But I'd like to particularly acknowledge distinguished university professor of history Art Eckstein and his wife, Dr. Judy Gumbo, who has known Mr. Seale for many years and helped us extend this invitation. You will remember that I said that one of our goals is to facilitate stimulating conversations and critical dialogue on campus and in the community. So I invite you to add your voice to the Twitter exchange at hashtag ARHUDLS. That's hashtag ARHUDLS. And also to participate in the question and answer session that will follow the lecture and panel. Finally, I want to thank our co-sponsors for this event, the Nathan and Jeanette Miller Center for Historical Studies, the Department of History, the Department of African American Studies, and the college's African American Digital Humanities Project, which is supported by the Andrew Mellon Foundation. Last but not least, I want to thank the staff of the Dean's Office who worked throughout the year to plan and conduct a successful series. And without them, we wouldn't be here. So thank you, Ashley and Nikki and all your staffs and wherever you are. Linda. At this time, please join me in welcoming Assistant Professor of History Christopher Bonner, who is the person who's been sitting up here and you were wondering why he was sitting here. And he is going to introduce our special guest. And again, welcome.
All right, good evening, everyone, and happy Black History Month. It is, it's incredible to see so many people here. This is the most people I've ever seen at an event at the University of Maryland. Other folks have been here longer than I have, but it's great. So before we get started, a couple of logistical things. Bonnie mentioned the sort of structure. I'm gonna talk for a few minutes and sort of set the context for some of the work that Bobby Seale was doing, some of the work that the Black Panthers were doing, and what they've meant in different places and different times. I'm gonna have some slides that are gonna run on that sidewall, which will work for some of you guys and not for others. Then our speaker will come and offer his thoughts and share his experiences, and then we'll sit down and have a panel with two of my colleagues. And the other thing that I wanted to mention, if you have a cell phone, please turn your ringer off, silence it, turn it off so that we can have a undisrupted experience here. So, here we go. The life and existence of the Black Panther Party is a biography of oppressed America, black and white. Bobby Seale wrote this in his 1970 book, Seize the Time. It's a statement of the broadest concerns and the broadest possibilities of the Black Panther Party, confronting oppression in America. I am, as Bonnie mentioned, Christopher Bonner, professor of history in the department here at University of Maryland. I'm glad to welcome all of you guys, and thank you for coming. And I'm glad, of course, to welcome our speaker, Bobby Seale, the co-founder of the Black Panther Party. I hope that tonight will be an opportunity for us to talk together and reflect on what Black history means for all of us living in the United States now. I'm going to get us started by talking a little bit about this context, and then I'll say some words about what the Black Panther Party has meant in American history. And I'm going to have a colleague in the back there help me with the slides. Hopefully, yes. So Bobby Seale was born in Texas in 1936, and in his childhood, his family moved to Oakland, California. In the 1950s, he served in the U.S. Air Force, and then he left the military and started working as a sheet metal mechanic. He worked night shifts, and he was taking classes for a time at Merritt College in Oakland. And while he was in Oakland, he became involved, I learned yesterday, with the Afro-American Association, and he also met Huey Newton. Together in 1966, Seale and Newton founded the Black Panther Party for self-defense. They wrote out a 10-point program that included their demands and their beliefs, and they distributed it around Oakland. By 1970, the Black Panther Party had grown to thousands of members, and it had offices in more than 60 cities. But this group is about more than just numbers, and we're here because of more than just numbers. The Black Panthers would become a symbol of radical politics and black power, and they would represent the potential for transformation in the United States and beyond. The Panthers stick in our memory more than other radical political groups. We saw an example of this 2 years ago when Beyonce and her backup dancers dressed in black leather and berets for a performance that was a statement of black women's power. Of course, people who remember the Panthers less fondly were not very pleased with this. They felt like the performance was anti-law enforcement. They tried to start #BoycottBeyonce in response to this. So the Black Panthers have meant a lot of things to a lot of people, and one reason for that is that Bobby Seale and others used public displays to try to spread their image and spread their ideas. When you think about the Black Panthers, the image that's on the wall there might be one of the first things that comes to mind. This is Seale in May of 1967, walking through the California State House with armed members of the Black Panther Party. They were there to protest a law that would have made it illegal to carry loaded weapons in public. And this is one of the earliest things that the Black Panthers were trying to do, encouraging armed self-defense. Members would go on patrols. They would drive around Oakland armed, policing the police. They were trying to prevent police brutality, prevent abuses of power. They wanted to be known as a group that was willing to defend black people in the city, and this armed walk through the state capitol was one of the first things that brought national attention to the Black Panthers. So the image of black folks with guns is not just something we remember, it's something that was really important to what the Black Panthers were trying to do. But the party was more than this. Another reason that the Panthers stick in our memory is because they looked cool. And I'm not trying to be shallow here, right? The Black Panthers were working to promote black pride in a society that had said historically, for centuries, that black men and women were less valuable and less beautiful than people of other groups. This was part of a moment when black people claimed power by loving their own blackness, right? And so you have images like this produced by artists like Emory Douglas that celebrated black men and women. But still, the Black Panthers were even more than this. Seale and Newton built an organization that would work for black self-determination, for full employment, for decent housing, for the end of capitalist exploitation. They had a broad political program, and it's summed up best perhaps in the last of the 10 points that they drafted. The Black Panthers said that they wanted land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. They organized survival programs. They distributed free groceries, free shoes, they had free health clinics, most famously perhaps free breakfast for children. At one point, the free breakfast program operated in 19 cities and fed 20,000 children a week. So this work is what made the Black Panthers important symbols beyond the communities where they were organizing, the communities where they were living. So what you see, if you can look closely there at the wall, this has also been scanning here, that is graffiti on the front of Francis Scott Key Hall here on campus, and it says, "Free Bobby." In 1969, Seale was arrested and charged with inciting a riot at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Activists had gone to the DNC in 1968 to protest US involvement in the Vietnam War and the massive destruction that the war produced. So, for example, by 1968, more than 500,000 US soldiers were involved in the war at Vietnam, and American forces had dropped more bombs on North Vietnam than all of the bombs detonated during World War II. Police violently suppressed these protesters. And Bobby Seale was among the speakers who encouraged protesters to defend themselves against the police. As a result of that, he was charged with inciting a riot. Seale was put on trial as part of a group known as the Chicago 8, and many people saw that trial as a government effort to silence protest. Infamously, when Seale demanded the right to represent himself, the judge ordered that Bobby Seale be bound and gagged to silence him. And so this image is part of how you get "Free Bobby" spray painted on a wall at University of Maryland. American people saw a black man chained and muzzled. The trial revealed to many the limits of justice that were available to African Americans. Ultimately, the DNC protest organizers were cleared of all the charges. At the same time, Seale was accused of conspiracy to commit murder in Connecticut when a group of Panthers killed a man that they thought was an FBI informant. Seale was also cleared of that charge, and for a lot of people, these events, the people like the DNC protesters, people like students here at Maryland, both of these trials were symbols of the ways that the government was trying to suppress protest, and in particular to suppress black organizing. Many people, black and white, in the late 1960s were calling for peace and freedom, but political leaders were calling for law and order. So before I wrap up here, I know I'm the one thing standing between you and our speaker. I want to say one last thing about protests here at the University of Maryland. Seale and the Black Panthers helped to inspire more than just graffiti. In the spring of 1970, President Richard Nixon announced a further escalation of the war in Vietnam, and Maryland students decided to go on strike. They walked out of classes in protest. On May 4th, hundreds of students rallied on McKeldin Mall, and then they marched on Route 1. On Route 1, police and National Guardsmen were called in, and they were ordered to use nightsticks and tear gas to disperse the crowd. That same night, National Guardsmen killed 4 students during similar protests at Kent State University in Ohio. Demonstrations would continue here over the next several days, and the students produced a list of demands. They demanded the right to protest on their campus. They demanded the immediate withdrawal of troops from Vietnam, and they called for an end to racial oppression, particularly efforts to destroy the Black Panther Party. And so as you see there in that newspaper, Free Bobby Seale was part of the message that these students carried with them during these protests. The campus was chaotic in May of 1970. Students marched, officers fired tear gas, students threw the tear gas canisters back, dozens of people were arrested. Ultimately, the United States did not agree to end its involvement in the Vietnam War until 1973. But the students who were protesting here at Maryland in 1970 had big ideas about the changes they wanted to see. These are people who wanted to build a better future. They confronted violent opposition in their efforts, and they were inspired by what they knew about the work and the ideas of Bobby Seale and the Black Panthers. One of the other things that Seale wrote in his book, Seize the Time, is this: we need activists who cross all ethnic and religious backgrounds and color lines, who will work to establish civil and human rights for all. Tonight is a chance to think about that vision, to think about the fight for justice and the power that people have to try to create it. And so the title of what we're going to hear tonight is Resistance from the 60s to Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Bobby Seale.
Thank you. Wow, this is great. Reminds me of the 60s. This kind of crowd here, yeah. You know, it hit the spot like a balmy breeze on a night in May, like a cool mint julep on a summery day. I see this picture up here with Marlon Brando. Marlon was, he came up to see us. He was going to shoot a movie called Burn. And he was a white oppressor in the movie, in the islands, Caribbean islands area. And when he came up, he wanted to meet some real revolutionaries, us, right there. And we got to know each other, and he went to trial with me, et cetera, boom, 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 and all of those kind of things. And Dr. Martin Luther King called me up, not Dr. King, Dr. Reverend Ralph Abernathy called me up for Dr. King in 1968, before he was killed, a month before he was killed. And Dr. King, Dr. Reverend Ralph Abernathy asked me, Mr. Seale, we would like to know if you want to work with Dr. King and SCLC for upcoming Poor People's March sometime this latter part of this year. I says, yes, yes. He says, well, I says, you're going to organize? He says, well, we have over 110 organizations scattered throughout America in all the community areas where African American people are concentrated. He says, and you're on the West Coast, and you're about the last one we're going to call. I said, well, yeah, you Poor People's March, whatever Dr. King wants. Sure, I'll be happy to. We went on to discuss that, and what he was talking about was that with the march and after the march, we want to maintain roundtables of these organizational groups in the states and areas that they're in so that they can work to identify and understand how to go about getting more greater economic rights connected with our civil human rights. This is what Dr. King, I says, whatever he wants. Now you have to understand that I really admired King, even though my party members, Eldridge Cleaver, did something very wrong when he tried to depict Martin Luther King one time, and I wound up not in front of party members, cussing him out do this to Brother King. When Dr. King was the first major African-American leader that I went to hear in Oakland, California in the early part of 1963. And I went there, to hear him. I stopped going to churches long time before that, because I got tired of the hell and damnation, always hell, to a point it traumatized you, growing up as a kid. Anyway, I love science and I love all kind of stuff, but I went to hear Dr. King speak. And this was at a time when I had probably one of the top jobs in the industry, dealing with a NASA project. I worked for Kaiser Aerospace and Electronics in Oakland, California, in the engineering department, doing electromagnetic field black light non-destruct inspections of engine frames for the Gemini missile program, in all 3 stages of exhaust housing, what have you. That was me at the time. So I had elevated myself through the Air Force, after the Air Force, into this kind of work, high-tech work. And simultaneously, I'm at Merritt College on a part-time basis, 6 or 9 credit hours as an engineering design major. And this is after I'm out of the Air Force. And I went to hear Dr. King speak. And Dr. King speaking at the Oakland Auditorium, and Oakland Auditorium holds 6,750 people. Every seat was taken. I'm just one individual. I have no organization or nothing at this time, what have you. And Dr. King was talking about how all these companies across America will not hire people of color. Too many of them will not hire people of color. And he talked about how, what have you, representing this institutionalized racism, what have you, et cetera. And of course, he was in the San Francisco, Oakland Bay Area. And he got to a point in his speech, and he says, Kilpatrick's Bread Company here in the San Francisco, Oakland Bay Area will not hire any people of color. And I've learned that Langendorf Bread Company will not hire any people of color here. And all across America, Wonder Bread Company will not hire any people of color. I say we're going to have to boycott them. And we want to boycott them so consistently and so profoundly, we want to make Wonder Bread wonder where the money went. Now, Dr. King upset us and upset me, inspired me. I mean, we hit the floor. 7,000 people practically hit the floor applauding. I mean, I was totally inspired, really, by Dr. King on that one. I love that stuff. I love what Dr. King was doing. And this is way before the party started. And boom, that sort of inspired me. Yeah, Malcolm X came later, 65, when he was killed, et cetera. I'm talking 3 or 4 years, 62, 63, and 64. And I quit my job. I quit my engineering job after 3.5 years just to work in the grassroots community in Oakland and San Francisco, Oakland Bay Area, and African-American communities. And I put together, me and 5 other students put together a tutorial program, a youth jobs program in Richmond, California. And, we did the whole gauntlet of it, wrote the proposals, got our 501c3 status and all that kind of stuff, got the building, got matching funds, et cetera, and then went before the board. And our tutorial program worked. We had 100 youth, and these youth, the 10th grader will tutor the 1st grader, the 11th grader will tutor the 2nd grader, the 12th grader, the 3rd grader, and junior college and others will tutor, up to the 5th grade. And we put that together, and there was 6 of us, so we only what was it, $350 a month we paid ourselves, because we took the other half of that and matched it for 6 other people who were indigenous to the community and trained them through a 2-year process of what this program is about. And then we would leave that institution in the community. And so it was educational, and those paychecks, those little paychecks, we had the youth working 36 hours a week in the summer and 20 hours a week in the winter at this tutorial program. That's the first program I put up. In other words, getting into working in the civil rights, to me, was about real stuff. You do it. One thing to stand on the corner and talk, yeah, I know, and we have to do that and educate, et cetera, blah, 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 blah. But the fact that Dr. King and all his protests, et cetera, evolved that Civil Rights Act, and with that Civil Rights Act came the War on Poverty program, et cetera. And that's very important to look at in terms of trying to make change in a political system that's repressive, discriminatory, what have you, et cetera. And so that was my first. And of course, later, as we evolved in San Francisco and Bay Area, I created the Black History Fact Group, me and Virgil Morrell, and we put Black American history into the curriculum at Merritt College, where we were going, and that kind of stuff. I mean, that was good research at my house across the street from Merritt College. I lived across the street. And we would meet at my house, and around the long dining room table in our dining room there, you know, I had all my books and materials, et cetera. Living in the San Francisco and Bay Area, and of course, to do all of that, I had been going to the University of California at Berkeley, 20 blocks from my home, all the time, you know, picking up material, researching, you know. And you're researching and finding out things. I mean, I ran into a book of 250 slavery boats, a documentation by Dr. Herbert Aptheker. 250 slavery boats. That was slavery boats? I didn't know this stuff, you know. And I got to reading that stuff from 1800 to 1857. He documents 250 slavery boats, and he says the slavery boats I'm documenting constituted 10 or more slaves. He says there were other revolts and resistance going on amongst a lesser number of blacks on these slave plantations and places, et cetera, you know. He says, but I'm documenting these main ones, and the top 3 in the history, Gabriel Prosser in 1800, Denmark Visa in 1822, and 1931, Nat Turner. So that was, it blew my mind. You know, I says, wow, we really resisted. We tried to fight, do everything, whatever, et cetera. Because they had, the history that was taught, we was docile, we was backwards, we was, you know, that from. And then I got a hold of W.B. Du Bois's Black Reconstruction. Oh, my God. I says 168,000 people he documented fought in the Civil War. Black man. I says, no, it blew my mind. And he says that the 100 and some odd thousand who fought was matched by 100 and some odd thousand women who came across the back line and being the backup. You know, in war, you have to have, for every person in combat in the field, normally you're going to have 10 people backing them up in terms of producing supplies, what have you, et cetera. So, in a further way, what David was said, black folks, when that Civil War came, injected themselves into that situation. You know, and of course, Abraham Lincoln, 2 years into that war, wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, which was mainly a military tactic. You know, and the main 5 states that the heavy resistance on the part of the Confederates, and that's the states he actually said, Emancipation Proclamation, and this forever forthfree as an executive order, not an amendment, as an executive order. And if you read the Emancipation Proclamation, and right after it says, and this forever forthfree, next line says, all able-bodied black men would be taken into the Northern Union Army And he didn't say it that way. He said, because we getting our ass kicked and we need some black folks to help us stop the rest of the Confederates. And I guess he was promising them freedom, and he did do that with the 13th Amendment at the end. But that knocked me out. And then Black Reconstruction was some of our first congressmen duly elected to political office. I was shocked to learn this. I mean, this is the early 60s after I left my job. And all of that history, it was so much history, I mean, that I was digesting. And me and my friend Bertram Merrill did put Black history into Merritt College, and by this time I'm employed by the city government of Oakland, California, Department of Human Resources. So I say this because I want you to understand that just standing on the corner talking and some of the exaggerated ways that Eldridge Cleaver, who became our Minister of Information, tried to project the Black Panthers. He's the baddest man who ever set 2 feet inside history. You know, it sounds like that macho stuff. Well, Eldridge did that, and I kept telling him, man, you know, when we started this thing, because Eldridge was really not there at the beginning, you know, so much at the exact beginning. He joined the Black Panther Party 6, 7 months later after we started it. But the Black Panther Party, to me, was a political organization. And for a certain reason, Kwame Ture, then Stokely Carmichael, wrote a book, him and another author, Black Power. It came out in early 1965. That's a year before I ever created the Black Panther Party. And people talk about Black Power this, Black Power that, and what have you, et cetera. I'm working for the city government of Oakland, California. And I ran some guys one day. I said, they're standing on the corner talking about, we want Black Power. I said, you guys ain't gonna get no Black Power until you take over some of them political power seats. What you talking about, Brother Bobby? I said, the political power seats, man. I'm saying the city council seats, county supervisorial seats, and that kind of stuff. Yeah, but them the white man seats. I said, you better try to get some black folks in them seats. That's what you gotta do, you gotta do. I'm trying to say, this is the basis of why I did, because I then did a demographic research to see how many black politicians were duly elected across the country. I mean, I'm talking about, I'm counting all local, part-time mayor, all these seats in city councils, full-time, county supervisorial seats, county sheriffs, et cetera. That's all across. When you added them all up, I added them all up, and I came up with over 500,000 political seats that one could be elected to throughout the whole of the United States of America. And then I tried to clock to see how many black politicians was duly elected, and I came up with 52. Only 52. So if you understand where we were at in the 1960s, in terms of that political sphere, that's where I was coming from in organizing the Black Panther Party. I didn't organize the Black Panther Party so we could look bad with guns and tough, but that's the image people got. You see what I mean? And that's what the power structure really pushed. And then Eldridge and them, you know what I mean? I said, man, you gotta emphasize programs, and my program for voter registration, because we got to vote, get these people registered to vote. You know, the Civil Rights Bill, the Voting Rights Bill had passed too. And we already had the right to vote in Oakland, California, but we were miserably unregistered to vote, you know, in terms, and that was what was coming. So because we had police brutality in the community on the one hand, but simultaneously what was happening across the country before I started the party, when I started the party, and after I started the party, was vicious police brutality on peaceful protests. Peaceful protesters were shot, killed, murdered, beat, etc. And not only the black civil rights people. When the young white left radicals got into it, they got to getting beat, etc. Well, police brutality one-on-one. They says, damn, this shit is true. My point is, I'm just saying, you relate to that. So why did we go out there to patrol the police? Well, we wrote a 10-point platforming program way before we even named the thing. You know what I mean? And I'm still working for the city government of Oakland when we do this. I'm trying to get you to understand where I'm at. I have a great job. I was making more money on the city government job than I was making on my engineering job. But my point is, we're going to start this organization. And first, we just took some notes down. And since I dealt with employment at the North Oakland Neighborhood Service Center, we want full employment for our people. Since I was a carpenter and a builder, my father was carpenters, builders. I was raised that way. My father built our first home when I was 7.5 years old in Port Arthur, Texas, where we were from. And I'm saying that I was destined to be a carpenter because my uncles and everybody else were carpenters. My great-grandpa, I mean, I was learning at 6, 7, and 8 years of age that my grandpa, Art Seale, was the building contractor for 500 houses in Weirgate, Texas, near the Louisiana border, not far from Jasper, Texas, Jasper County. Jasper, Texas, and Jasper County is where both my mother and my father were born. My point, though, is we, on my father's side, come from the Seale plantation. With the early people, when the Emancipation Proclamation of June 10th popped up in Texas, 2 years after, black folks was free. And one young lady named Minnie, she went to work in the house of the Seale family. And the Seale family were the bankers in Jasper, Texas. And when the big contract came, my family's evolved with this family, in that sense. My father was already doing contracting and building, and they gave the contract to build it because old man Seale said Art Seale is the best person. But we'll work the white ones on this side, and we'll work the blacks separate on this side for the 500 houses, for some shale mining oil stuff in Texas, in that area. So that's where I come from. By the time I'm 15 years of age in Oakland, California, I'm doing lot plot layouts for my father and them adding rooms and dens. In other words, I'm an architect. I mean, in school, high school, Berkeley High School, et cetera, where I went, we had some of the best equipment, et cetera, in that school. But my point is, I excelled in that kind of stuff, and everything from auxiliary views, three-dimensional sectionals, what have you, et cetera, and blah, 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 blah. And architect, mechanical drafting and architectural design and drafting. I excelled at that with nothing but A's in mathematics. That was me. Now, on language arts, I was a C minus. But my point is, everybody have their area, and that's where I came. So I was a lucky guy to grow up with trades and skills and stuff like that. And then for 4 years, United States Air Force, structural repair, high-performance aircraft, getting B-52 bombers off the ground, et cetera. And I aced every tech school framework, every cross-training program, right on up to the beginning use of titanium for cowling systems and fabricating cowling systems, et cetera, when they cross-trained me at Castle Air Force Base and flew me back to Rapid City, South Dakota. I chose Rapid City, South Dakota when I come out of tech school as honor student and all this kind of stuff. Everybody, man, what Rapid City, what the hell is that? These brothers say, man, I'm going to take this one in North Carolina. I'm going to take this one in Merced. I says, no, I'm going up to the land of the Lakota. And the brothers told me, who is the Lakota? They didn't know. What had happened, at 14, 15, and 16, I identified with Native Americans, particularly and specifically the Sioux, the so-called Sioux. Their true name is the Lakota. The word Sioux is a French word. It means cutthroat. You know what I mean? It was you see what I mean? So I identified with them. I identified with Sitting Bull and I identified with Sitting Bull kicking Custer's butt and all that kind of stuff, I'm just saying growing up, but I didn't have a lot of politics at 15 and 16. But I did identify with them, and I understood and related to their struggle before I even knew any Black American history. You see what I'm getting at? Any real Black American history. So that's the context of where I was coming from when I created the Black Panther Party. I want more politicians. I want more Black politicians duly elected, so we have to capture the imagination of the people. If I can capture the imagination of the people, I can get them organized, and I can organize a political electoral machine. That's what I wanted to do in 1965, 66. This is what I was about. And so we decided to go out and patrol the police on point number 7 of our 10-point platform and program. Now, that 10-point platform and program, we wrote that program completely. It took some time. We started really writing it on the 10th of October when we went to court after we'd had fights with the Berkeley police. This is before the Black Panther Party started. And when Judge Stats gave us probation, I told Huey to meet me at my job, you know, down at where I worked for the city government that night. You know, I had the keys to get into the joint and everything. And that's when we started writing that 10-point platform and program. And, you know, the first point, we want power to determine our own destiny, meaning I wanted some Black political electoral unity. That's what I wanted in the community. And it's one thing to write something and try to be all highfalutin and the basic socioeconomic structure and the adverse conditions that you're subjected to, and considering particular sociological and psychological factors against the backdrop in the history of slavery, blah, 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 blah. So the young brother said, hey, bro, Bob, what they talking about, man? So, I mean, so let's do this to the point, you know, without some elaborate dissertative stuff. I mean, not that I'm against dissertations, you know, I mean, I'm just saying, that's what we wrote it plainly and basic. We want freedom, we want power to determine our own destiny community. But at the tail end of that program, and we'd written that thing, we worked on it 3 or 4 nights, and then 5 nights and 10 nights, and then I says, wow. So I got my wife to come down, Artie, my first wife, and to come down and type, you know what I mean, and what have you, et cetera, and pull this thing together. But I put and found the first 2 paragraphs of the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America. And I kept reading that. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary, blah, 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 blah. I read that, you know, a decent respect to the opinions of human. Oh, I said, God. And so Huey was upstairs at the War on Poverty office because that was the legal aid aspect of the War on Poverty place was a North Oakland Neighborhood Service Center. It had legal aid. I dealt with employment, et cetera. I ran the Summer Youth Jobs Program and I hired the youth in, the 100 youth, et cetera, and set up training programs, et cetera, and so on. That was what I was doing. So I say, Huey, come here, man, read this. He said, well, it's just, I said, no, you ain't read it, man. I said, you don't understand what they're saying. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for any one people to dissolve the political bondage which have connected them with another. Now, you can recite this and state this and flow it out, blah, blah, blah. But me, remember, another thing you got to know about me, I'm a jazz drummer. I've been a stand-up comedian before I got into this stuff and do that stuff besides being an architect and everything and a hunter and a fisherman. I mean, I did a lot of, I was multiple, whatever you call it. And I'm telling Huey, no. So I could stand there. I said, listen to me, Huey. If I'm standing in the corner and I want to excite the people, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary it sounds, you're a militant. You just stop, I'm reciting I'm reciting the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America. When a long train of abuses and usurpations pursues and invariably evinces a design to reduce a people under absolute despotism, then it is the right of the people to alter or change that government and provide new guards for their future security and happiness. Now, that's the Declaration of Independence, right? What am I trying to do? I'm trying to say that we want to organize people, get some new politicians, some black folks, some colored folks, even some hip liberal folks in the new guards for our future security and happiness. This is where I'm coming from. I'm coming from the foundation, the founding documentation and meaning of what this country is talking about. So I put that at the tail end of the 10-point platform and program of the Black Panther Party. And we went out the street to patrol the police. But before we do that, I made sure, told Huey, you in law school. He was 2 years in law school, night law school, private law school. And I said, you're going to research everything about the guns relative to their use and its relationship to the Bill of Rights and our civil rights advocacy. Everything. What? I said, you got to do that. Well, I said, if you don't do it, we ain't going out there. You know, and so, you know, when we did the program, I flipped the coin, I said, I'm chairman. Boom, you know, heads, I'm chairman. And I says, Huey, I says, well, you automatically Minister of Defense. Well, I want to be a leader too. I says, you can be a leader, but you ain't equal with me. What do you mean? I says, you're not, Huey. You don't know it, brother. I said, yeah, you got good theories and stuff, but I already organized 2 years ago a whole tutorial program out there, et cetera. And I organized and put Black History in Merritt College, you know, and I'm running a whole big, I says, so he went on and he did that, and he did do the research, and he pulled it together. And he got hold of every law concerning the guns, fish game law, all this kind of stuff. I mean, we had it down to a science how you cannot point a loaded weapon at a person, even inadvertently, with no intention of shooting. You know, you playing around. Under California law, if you did that, under California law, it's called you subject to assault with a deadly weapon. To be charged, you can be charged with that and go to prison for it. You know what I mean? So we knew all this. We knew the fish and game code laws. You could not ride in the car with a live round in the chamber of a rifle or a shotgun. Did not apply to a handgun. We knew every law in the world, all of it. Rights lawyers, Huey researched it, we got it together. And I taught these brothers how to handle guns, et cetera, because I was proficient. Not only because I was raised with guns and hunting, et cetera. My father bought my .30-30 Winchester high-powered rifle for me when I was 12 years old. You know, I would go hunting with them, you know, 11, turning in 12. They give me a little old .22 rifle, et cetera. But the hunting buddies, you know, my father had gobs of hunting buddies, 20, 25 of them, and it was nothing but to collect 2 carloads and go up to Mount Shasta, 300 miles, to hunt for the weekend, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, and come back Monday. So these guys, these black men taught me how to shoot that rifle, you know, when I was 12. Now, Huey is 7 years younger than me, you know what I mean? So Huey was, what, 5, 6 years old or something, you know what I mean, when I'm hunting or something. So I don't even know who he exists, you know what I mean? My point becomes, in the military service, I was proficient and became a marksman with the M1 carbine, et cetera, and so on. So I taught them and understood the holding of guns, the safety of guns. Man, I could break down an M1 carbine blindfolded and put it back together. You know what I mean? That's where how you train in the military service. And so I made sure they had Hewitt L. Edbright. I got the office with my paycheck. I had a long paycheck. And I rented all that stuff. I put that sign on the first window. I painted that sign there myself. You know, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense and so on, et cetera. Sister Mata Laba come by. I want to join your organization. I said, come on in, girl. She says, well, I'm going to make some curtains. I said, yeah. Our colors are blue and black. Why blue and black? I said, I'll tell you about it. They're black and blue. I said, give me some blue curtains in the back of those black letters there. And she did all of that, what have you, et cetera. But through that 2-month process, we got it down how when we do go out to patrol, I only have 14, 15 people. When we do go out to patrol, you know, only one person talked because Huey had the law down. One, if you go up and say something to a cop while he's carrying out his duty and you interrupt him by saying something, then you can be charged with interfering with a police officer carrying out his duty. But if you go out and you stand there and let the cops say something to you first, you can answer him back, and you cannot be charged with interfering with a police officer because the cop said something to you first, etc. This is the way it went. At any rate, I had them all dressed and everything, and I told them, I says, now, we're going to go out tomorrow, Friday night, in the red light district. We're going to be down in West Oakland. Now, I want all of you guys to take a bath, and I want you to iron your pants out and stuff, put your little jackets on. If you ain't got no leather jacket, of course, I told you I already bought you some bush jackets, black bush jackets, you know, and you have the blue shirts. This is what I want. And wash your butt and everything. While we got, and then the only one brother, I remember little Bobby Hutton said, oh, well, we got to take a shower just because we going out there to patrol some old funky, brutal cops. I said, because we ain't no blippies. I said, what's a blippy? I said, a black hippie that don't take no bath. That's what it is. I says, and you ain't going to go out here. We're going to go out there organized. We're going to look, we're going to be sharp, etc. And we got to look organized. I said, you in the black folk, I said, you go out there in the black community and you stinking, etc. and stuff, and you talking about you going to organize somebody? Black folks said, boy, you better go home and organize some soap under your ass. As Richard Pryor would put it. My point, though, I'm telling you, see, the involvement of getting this going, etc. Anyway, that night we got out there, that Friday night, it was the second week in January, because we started the party in '66, but it took all that time to put that together. And we walked up there, and we was past Slim Jenkins. This is a nightlife place, 9:30 or something at night. Cop, we saw it stopped the person, so we pulled up a block up and parked legally and all this stuff, got out the car, walked down, and some sister came out. She was a well-dressed sister, you know, out of Slim Jenkins, you know, and she saw us passing by. She says, wow, you people look quite spiffy. She actually had a cocktail glass in her hand. You young men look at women, and women, look, I had one sister there, Geraldine. And boom, half of us had handguns. No guns, as long as the gun is not concealed, it's not illegal, you see? So I've taught people how to handle guns. This is not no macho crap that I got my gun. That way, you couldn't even do that with me, you know what I mean? I didn't care for that crap. Anyway, everybody's ready. And as we walked up, the cop's car is somewhat, 15 feet out. Because it's a big wide street. We had 3 lanes over here and 3 lanes plus parking on each side of the street. It's nighttime. And so as we walked up, people are already there coming out of the store and the liquor store and Slim Jenkins. So it was about 30, 40 people stopping and looking at us. Boom. I said, everybody step off the curb. And they step off the curb. And boom. And the cop is in his passenger side seat. And his door is open. His arrestee is standing at the back of his patrol car with his hand on the trunk. And he's looking at us. People are looking at us. The cop doesn't see us yet because he's on his radio and his passenger side seat open. And as we walked up, an old man came out of the grocery store. He said, it's nighttime. What they got? Sticks in their hands? The rifles he was on. And so the tall brother over here, he says, he knew him. He called him Henry or somebody. Be quiet, man. Them guns. And it said guns, and then Huey turned around, and the old man said, I'm leaving. Huey says, turn around, no one leave, everyone stay here. We researched the law. We have a right to stand and observe these police officers here who've been brutalizing us in the community. And by this time, it's caused the cop to get out, standing as Huey turns around. The cop says, you have no right to observe me. And I really have to give Huey great credit here because he did the research and came up. He says, no, California State Supreme Court ruling states that every citizen has a right to stand and observe a police officer carrying out their duty as long as they stand a reasonable distance away. A reasonable distance in that particular room is constituted as 8 to 10 feet. I'm standing approximately 20 feet from you, and we'll observe you whether you like it or not. Now, observe it whether you like it or not. is that gun loaded? He would say, if I know it's loaded, that's good enough. Well, I have it right. He would say, you have nothing. Huey kicked off with something, United States Supreme Court, somebody versus so-and-so, blah, 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 blah. You cannot remove a person's property from it without due process of law. Step back. You cannot touch my weapon. The tall brother over there, he said, man, what kind of Negroes is these? We said we were going to capture it. That's what we were doing. And it was also captured my imagination more to my point. And the cop says, well, is it loaded? He would say, clack, clack. Like I said, if it's loaded, my gun's loaded, I know it's good enough. Now, when he clacked and jacked around, the other member remembered they couldn't have a live round in the chamber of long guns, right? And that's what had happened. We got out of the car and never jacked around. Clack up, clack up, clack up, clack up. So the other brother who was with his hand, the arrestee, ducked behind the car and said, don't shoot this way. And the cop looked and turned around, and he didn't realize it was 14 of us, with Geraldine in the middle, with a big 44 pistol strapped to her side, with a brown bush jacket, that big, pretty afro, and she had these hanging earrings that flickered with the night light. And the cop is getting his arrestee and putting him in the car, shutting his doors, and those flickering just caught the cop's eyes. And he stopped, and he had to look. He wanted to make sure one of us was a woman, right on. You know what I mean? Bang, and he got in his car and drove off. And I said, brothers and sisters, people in the car, my name is Bobby Seale. I'm chairman of the Black Panther Party. This is my friend Huey P. Newton. He's Minister of Defense of our organization. We're a new organization, and we're out here to patrol these police who've been brutalizing us, but more importantly, so we can organize the people in the community, get you registered to vote, so we can take over some of these political seats and start changing things. Our Constitution, democratic civil rights, blah, 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 you know, I was going on that way. And boom, and passing out the 10-point platform and program. Tomorrow we will have a meeting at the headquarters of the Black Panther Party, 5624 Grove Street, which is a block from my home in North Oakland. I says, you can come by at 2 p.m. It's Saturday, et cetera, and we'll explain more to you about the Black Panther Party if you want to talk about working with us. Boom, 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 boom. And we left. My point is, that was the key. And little we didn't know it, that traveled word of mouth. Now, you have to imagine, we did not do this every day. We couldn't do this every day. We couldn't do this every night. You know, we didn't have but 16, 17 members. Big man Albert Howard was a member, but he had a full-time job and a full load, a full 12-credit-hour load at Merritt College, you know what I mean? And other people, et cetera, were busy. But my point is, that's how the party got started, and the word of mouth traveled. And we had a couple of other confrontations in my book, Seize the Time, et cetera. Now, I don't have a lot of books with me here tonight, but you guys got to go to my website. Bobby Seale is my name, is my website on the index page, and you can click up Bobby Seale's bookstore, and boom, you can order books, et cetera. I have them all listed there, et cetera. But my point is, that was not some macho crap. I'm trying to show you, I believed in organizing. Organizing, paying attention to all the particulars and specifics. And in teaching the Black Panther Party, as the party grew, I mean, the first year there was never no more than 50 people in my organization, because they put me in jail after I led that armed delegation to the California State Legislature. But it was a misdemeanor. They couldn't give me no more than a misdemeanor for what they charged me with, and they charged me with disturbing the peace of the California State Legislature. I went there to read our first executive mandate from the Black Panther Party to the California State Legislature and Ronald Reagan and others, you know, and of course, in all this 6 months, when we did patrol police, we were legal as a crime, and that's the problem. The police didn't know what to do. So they went to the state legislature, Mulford in particular, who represented that area, and got him to start putting a bill in to try to stop us from carrying loaded guns. Now, they couldn't say we couldn't carry guns, because then they would have jumped on who? They would have jumped on the National Rifle Association, you see what I mean, at that time. And then even the National Rifle Association came out with their racist butts and says, them Black Panthers should not have a right to carry a gun, but yet they got the right to carry. You know what I mean? At any rate, it was that beginning. It would be a year later that Dr. King was killed. When Dr. King was killed, I already had my coalition with Dr. King to work with his Poor People's March. It did happen later that year, but Dr. King was killed. My organization swelled from 400 members up and down the West Coast to 5,000 members across the United States of America. From the time that Dr. King was killed up to the day that Richard M. Nixon that year was elected to political office in a 7-month period. That's how I did. And I went to practically every chapter in every branch. I get them to go to the colleges, get the colleges to bring me out to speak. I says, when they bring me out to speak, I says, I will come there and give you guys some political educations to help authorize your franchise to have a chapter or a branch of the Black Panther Party, et cetera, and so on. That's the way this happened. And I taught them. I taught them the fine particulars and the methodology of effective grassroots community organizing. And that was the key to it, you know. So I added real programs. When I put the Free Breakfast for Children program up, boom. J. Edgar Hoover jumped on the horn on the national television. The Black Panthers Breakfast for Children program is a threat to the internal security of America. A breakfast program for kids is a threat to... In fact, he caused our program to spread like wildfire. And of course, every chapter and every branch, I'm teaching them, you got to start a free sickle cell anemia testing program. You have to start a free breakfast for children program. And y'all come up with any other kind of programs that are really relevant you can make. Well, once the party members knew what to do, boom, chapters and branches, they start coming up with all kinds of programs. Free pest control program. Sister Audrey Jones, she ran the whole Boston, Massachusetts state chapter of the Black Panther Party. She came up with the free pharmacy program. I mean, this party, young folks, et cetera, once they understood it and why we were doing it. Because at the same time you were creating these programs, you must begin a voter registration drive in your community. You have to identify all these councilmatic districts and the people who are in these councilmatic districts. They're a bunch of races, in most cases, et cetera. And if there's some positive or progressive black brother or something or sisters are going to run, et cetera, and we can talk to them, we will align with them and help them elect office, and or if we got some brothers or sisters in the party, et cetera, you can run for some political office. Because the objective I had is I wanted multi-thousands of black folks duly elected to political office. Because remember, it was only 52 duly elected office in 1965. In real time, even after the party was over, when the end of the 1970s, 7,000 black folk was duly elected to political office. Into the 80s, 10 years later, 15,000 was duly elected. But today, it's over 20-some-odd thousand black folks duly elected to political office throughout the United States of America. Plus, women's rights and women's triple and quadruple in terms of being duly elected as politicians, which was very important and even more important even today and consistently. This is important. I mean, it was not just us, but the Black Panther Party that caused this. All the civil rights movement and other protest frameworks, et cetera, caused this evolvement of this political framework. And today we sit here with a racist idiot as a president. You know what I mean? My point. So today it's more about evolving more and more really progressive type candidates. This is the kind of thing we need, you see. In the House of Representatives, there are approximately 90 progressive voting people in the House of Representatives. The rest of it in the House of Representatives, you know, is controlled by the racist right-wing Republicans primarily, okay? What we have to do and what the young folks have to get involved in, and those who are there, and you have to get committees and stuff, and especially sisters, it's very important that we move. I mean, this upcoming election here in 2018, et cetera, we got to have you running everywhere, et cetera. You got to create committees, and those that's working with each other, forget all the backbiting and stuff, work and run and become committees and groups connected with organizations. And that's why I'm telling the Black Lives Matter young brothers and sisters, I was trying to tell them all these last few years, you know, I said, it's one thing to write a program, and it's one thing to make protests and to become very popular in your thing. I said, but you got to really root in. You have to go after some of these political seats where you see racists and idiots, people, even Democrats, if they're assholes, et cetera. I mean, you run against these dudes, and I want you to go in there with a progressive ideological thing. So we can have not just 90 progressive voting people in the House of Representatives, we need 3 times that many so we can have the majority, and we put all the progressive programs over. These fools held up the infrastructure program for a decade. A decade, they refused to do it. And you put the infrastructure program up, boom, 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 boom. Look how many jobs it's going to kick. And then they're going to ignore climate change. I mean, there's 10+ million jobs with both climate change and infrastructure that can be put together in this country. You know what I mean? Constitutional, democratic, civil, human rights. You know what I mean? And I just want to say that they attacked us finally in 1969. This is when the real attacks, hardcore attacks, came down. Nixon, when I was doing for my film and researching for my documentary film, I got a hold out of Vanderbilt University. Their archival framework down there is something else. I found a audio tape, one of the Watergate tapes, the many Watergate tapes that's been made public, you know, for many years now. And I found Richard M. Nixon talking on the phone in the voice of Richard M. Nixon to J. Edgar Hoover just after he was sworn in early 1969. Now, J. Edgar, when are you going to get rid of these Black Panthers for me? Now, what have you been doing? Have you been doing anything to do that? Well, sir, we've been moving on it. Well, you got to get it going because I want them out of the way. Now, J. Edgar, John Mitchell's going to be calling you, et cetera. Yes, sir. John Mitchell's the United States Attorney General under him. And then a month later, John Mitchell's on national television. By the end of this year, we'll be rid of these Black Panthers. This is what happened. Go back. I only had 400 members just before Dr. Martin Luther King up and down the West Coast. I had no chapters or branches across country. They killed Dr. King. A lot of people rioted. I never liked riots. In fact, I stopped the rioting off Richmond. After Dr. King was killed, they got the rioting out there 3 days out there. The same place where I had put that tutorial program up in that community. I went out there and stopped that riot, stopped it cold, et cetera, told them, okay, Mr. Seale, they knew me in the community. Like, you know, I put programs in. No, this is not what it's about. Constitutional rights, as I said, revolution is not about a need for violence. It's about a need to re-evolve more political, economic, and social justice empowerment back into the hands of the people. That's what revolution is about. You know what I mean? So I'm on record. Well, I hadn't showed up for court prior to Dr. King getting shot up, murdered, et cetera. And so I was in court a little bit after I stopped that riot. And so Judge Statz says, I'm going to violate your probation and put you in jail. So Charles Gary, my lawyer, our chief counsel of the Black Panther Party, he says, Your Honor, can I approach the bench? What is it, Mr. Gary? And he walks up to him and he hands him the front pages of the newspaper. It says, Bobby Seale stops riot in Richmond, California, which I did, because I don't believe in riots. I believe in organizing. I believe in putting my machine together. I believe in getting people registered to vote. I believe in Boom. And yeah, we're going to be attacked, and I believe in the right to self-defense. Other than that, you don't come down here attacking me, ain't going to be no violence, you know what I mean? But you come down here bringing your violence to me like you did at Robert Williams in 1959 in Monroe, North Carolina, just because he was protesting downtown Monroe, North Carolina to try to get some jobs, peaceful protest. He had no guns or nothing down there. And then at night, the Ku Klux Klan started coming in the community, 10 or 12 trucks and pickup trucks full of Ku Klux Klanners, just shooting up the black community. And Robert Williams, this brother, was a Marine out of the United States Army, man, fought in Korea, what have you, et cetera, and so on. And he was with the NAACP. That's what he was, head of the NAACP there trying to get to protest for jobs. And he came back, and Robert Williams said, gosh, damn, we got to get some guns and shoot back. And that's what he started doing. And it looked like it was going to be a war down there. When the NAACP says, brother, you got to leave. What? You get up and get out of there. You know, we don't have enough politicians. This is 1959. We don't have it. The sheriff's department ain't going to do nothing. The sheriff's department probably a member of the Ku Klux Klan anyway. Yeah. So my point is, when I was telling those young brothers, you know, you got to take those political seats. In that demographic research I told you I did about across America, I found some 22 counties from the Carolinas to Alabama to Mississippi, et cetera. I found some 22 counties that had seemingly a big majority of black folks in them. They just didn't have the right to vote, right? Now the Civil Rights Act, if you could get these people registered to vote, in those particular counties, black folks is a majority, they could elect the sheriff, Robert Williams, to be the sheriff. And the Ku Klux Klan gets to acting up, well, the sheriff can deputize 200, 300, 400, 500 brothers with guns and go over there and kick the Ku Klux Klan's butt. That's power to defend ourselves and our lives. You see what I mean? So I'm trying to get the people to understand the value of having those political seats. Because in effect, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, all right. Let me say this to the young brothers and sisters and people, you know, that was a long struggle. By the end of 1969, I had 28 dead Black Panther Party members, 69 wounded because they attacked practically every office across the country under fake searching. I mean, when I say attack, they didn't come there saying you're under arrest. They just came in shooting. That's what I'm calling it. That's what they did because they knew we would take the arrest. It's like when I went to the California State Legislature, when I didn't have but 23, 24 members, you know, after we left the Capitol and we was in the service station, you know, and the police was getting ready to come down and says, all right, you guys, you know the policy. Our policy was if you're going to formally arrest me, we'll take the arrest because we're not scared of the courtroom. You know what I mean? It wasn't no problem. Just because they're going to arrest us, we're going to not, boom, we surrender our guns if it's a formal arrest. But if you come in here just shooting, we're shooting back to stop you from killing and murdering us because you're the ones that's wrong in that context, you see. So that's to be understood where we were at. But all the issues, Bernie Sanders' outline back in his candidacy, et cetera, is one to stick to. That's a very progressive outline of the things that we have to do nowadays from the federal level and of what we have to do also on the local levels, including try to take more seats on the state levels, et cetera, city, county seat levels, et cetera. Brothers and sisters, people, you got to deal with this. You got to research and know the people and the politicians in these areas and assess whether they're going to be progressive or whether they're going to be right-wing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and try to take over some of these seats and organize the people. Because this is about all humanity now. I mean, the best program that you can latch onto is ecology, et cetera, because it affects everybody. You see what I mean? Whether you're black, white, blue, red, green, yellow, or polka dot. You know what I mean? This is where we come from. And people may not see this, but we can create jobs. I advertise and said, I've been talking about this for many, many years. You know what I mean? I'm talking about since the late 80s and early 90s. But this is where we're at. And right now, we're up against the wall. And we got to take back. We got to get a majority of the seats in that House of Representatives and take it away from those right-wing racist Republicans. We got to get this stuff done. And we got to get involved. I want you to get your education. I want you, please get your education and do that. You know what I mean? My daughter, she's turning 40 now, you know what I mean? And she's got her job and own her house, et cetera, and I want all that to happen. I have a community housing program that I'm working on in the San Francisco, Oakland Bay Area, in the Richmond community, in Alameda County and stuff that I'm working on with other people and other organizations and my old politicians, my buddies and people. But I ran into some brothers down here in one of the Carolinas. They got access to possibly some land. And I says, well, what about community cooperative housing? And I got to explain to my concept of community cooperative housing, et cetera. Well, you just going to do it in Oakland? I says, no, I'll do it anywhere where you brothers want to. I'll show you how to put this damn thing together. You know what I mean? So that's one program. But that goes to ecology and infrastructure. You see what I'm getting at? And this is what I'm talking about now. You know, we live in an overdeveloped, high-tech, fast-paced, computerized, scientific, technological, social order. We're not even living in the 50s. You know, we didn't have no electronic stuff like this here. All we had was an A.B. Dick machine. Some of you brothers know exactly what I'm talking about. With that A.B. Dick mimeograph machine, that was our communication. But man, I had a dynamic organization. Boom, they attacked it. They put me in jail they put me in jail and I won all my cases, so I was a political prisoner for 2 years. And they beat me up in jail trying to break my spirit and stuff like that, you know. But, you know, that ain't stopping me. And you remember I said, John Mitchell, at the beginning of 1969, it's on national television, he says, by the end of this year, we'll be rid of the Black Panthers. Well, I organized my people, because when they first said, when J. Edgar Hoover, in December of 1968, just after the election was over, J. Edgar Hoover got on television. That's the first time he said we were a threat to the internal security of America. I call a retreat because I had chapters and branches in 40-some-odd different places. I want 2 to 3 people from every chapter and branch here in Oakland. You got 2-3 days to get here. You'll be here a week plus, and you're going to learn how to fortify. You're going to learn how to network. You're going to learn how to democratize the Black Panther Party newspaper all across the country. Because we were at that point, we were up to near 400,000 circulation of Black Panther Party newspaper every Saturday. I had it down to a science to finish the layout system at midnight Wednesday, take the paper over to the printers, that big roll press, they run all them darn papers off, get the first loads, and take them to the airport, ship them papers to all the different places they got to go to, et cetera, boom, 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 boom. So they picked them papers up, et cetera. So Saturday morning, the brothers and sisters, get your Black Panther Party newspaper, boom, boom, boom. This is what was happening. We had a media communication framework with the community. And we did that. Them brothers and sisters, and most of my party members was women. By the end of 1960, 2/3 plus were sisters in the Black Panther Party. And I'm not talking about just sisters. We had sisters in leadership organizing positions, from Kathleen Cleaver to Sister Archer Jones, who run the Massachusetts State Chapter. Tupac Shakur's mama ran the Harlem office of the Black Panther Party. You see? So all of that other crap, you know, the lies and the distortions they try to propagate, et cetera, boom, boom, boom. Nah, I didn't relate to it. You know what I mean? None of that. Anyway, it's been a long struggle. Yeah, I'm 81 years old. Yeah. And I'm here, and I'm going to make sure this next 10 years, I'm going to get my film done. You know, I ran into some problem with trying to get it off the ground in the last few years, because I found out in the background the right-wing people were behind it, and then they wanted me to sign something, and I says, no, unless I'm in control, unless my script and my story is told. Or we have somebody else to write script. I said, well, I ain't working with you. You ain't gonna be, I know what you, and I found out, you know what I mean? So I'm still on that. And I'm going to be asking people, brothers and sisters and people, you want to help me with my film? You want to help me with my community housing program that I'm trying to get off the ground? And yeah, we got some grants and stuff we're putting in from the Dellum's Institute for Social Justice that I work with, from the Martin Luther King Freedom Center in Oakland, California that I work with, from the East Side Arts Alliance, and several other community organizations that I work with these brothers and sisters in different ways and different for programs and stuff, and we unite, et cetera. And we did get a bill through in our Alameda County for $580 million to try to build low-income housing, because they're gone crazy with this real estate. You see what I mean? But the low-income housing, I want community cooperative housing. So if it's community cooperative in a certain way, boom, 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 your houses is not in that market field, because this nonprofit entity runs the framework. You see what I'm getting at? And perpetuates, and so the people with low income, et cetera, oh my God. Power to the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. I know there's a lot of people out here who are eager to have a chance to talk a little bit more with Bobby Seale one-on-one, and so, you hate to sort of trim the wisdom, but I wanted to sort of open this up as much as possible. And so I want to invite two of my colleagues up, and we're going to talk very briefly. We're going to talk Sharon Harley, who teaches in the English department, and Art Eckstein, my colleague in history. We're bringing them up, and we want to talk just a tiny bit a little bit more about the sort of historical context. And part of why we've chosen these particular faculty members is that both of them were very much involved in the left radical politics of the 1960s. And so I'm just going to give them a chance to ask some quick questions to Mr. Seale and have him share a little bit more wisdom. And then we'll see if we can open it up at all for some of y'all to have a chance. So.
Hi, I'm a professor in the African American Studies Department. I'm here because I'm a former member of the Black Panther Party. So it began like this. I went to a Catholic women's college in Indiana to play field hockey, and I came home selling Black Panther Party papers. One of my roommates was from Chicago and knew Fred Hampton, and she recruited me in Black Panther Party. The school I went to had lots of money, so we used the food from that school to subsidize our free breakfast program in Terre Haute, Indiana. So when I come back to DC, my parents don't know what happened. What happened to their lovely, preppy daughter? Because I started selling Black Panther Party papers on F Street in Washington, D.C. We had an office on 18th Street, and the FBI, we were the first floor. The FBI had the second floor. And so we would just wave at them, and they had cameras and all of that. So what attracted me to the Black Panther Party was its progressive politics. I thought it was progressive about race and class. But I spent a lot of my academic career as a professor of Black women's history having to defend the gender politics of the Black Panther Party. So, Mr. Seale, I'd like for you to talk a little bit more about women in the Black Panther Party. I went to the Black Panther Party because I thought it was more progressive than any of the other organizations. And so I defended the Black Panther Party because my experiences were positive, they were very progressive. This was a very progressive cadre of male and female comrades. And so it was shocking to me when people talked about sexism in the party.
Yeah, well, there was some people's sexism that went down, and they were wrong. And I even caught one brother raped a sister, and Lauren was there. Lauren, right here, Lauren Williams, my former party member, she's sitting right here in the blue sweat. Yeah. Anyway, she's an Afro-Japanese sister, and Lauren had got the pictures and everything and took photographs of her bruises, whatever. And the brother, he'd been trying to hit on this sister. That's what it was. And it was a retreat period where people were sleeping on the floors and sleeping bags and half mattresses because they had to sleep in the houses. The houses we had available, when people come in to retreat, we had to make room for them, that kind of stuff, you know. So so I had hearings, you know. I'm chairman. I know, boom, 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 bring him in. In fact, Lauren is the one who charged him, and that whole thing. So I just wanted him kicked out of the party. So I got that, you know, that he'd be kicked out of the party. And then I told Lauren, I says, Lauren, take pictures of him, you know, because we had a column in the newspaper called Enemy of the People, you know what I mean? So we're going to put you in the column of that this person does not represent the Black Panther Party anymore in such and such a chapter, such and such a branch, and he has now been kicked out because his negative attitude and it violated the personal dignity of Sister so-and-so and so, et cetera, that kind of thing, you know, that's what I was going to do. But some of the field marshals was on the Central Committee there, and after they had a break, they come back and say, Chairman, we shouldn't put that what? Say, well, the power structure is going to see that, and then they're going to come in here and maybe try to arrest somebody. I said, oh, man. I said, well, he's just got to go. Well, he don't want to. He wants physical discipline. I said, I don't dig no physical discipline. Well, he say he wants it, et cetera. And so they outvoted me, and they're going to give him physical discipline. And then, of course, what happened, we took another break. You have to understand something. When I run an organization and stuff, it's like I want food ready, et cetera, for the breaks and all this kind of, that kind of stuff. Anyway, and they was back there in the back, and they was going to give him physical discipline. I said, well, he wants the physical discipline. I don't. I said, but since you guys outvoted me, you can't hit him in the head. And then he had about 5 or 6 young men, and I heard it through the window because I was sitting in the office, but I could hear it through the back window. So this guy, Joe, who did the rep, anything y'all can put on me, baby, I can take. Y'all can, you know, he's bragging. You know what I mean? I said, what the heck? So I walked to the back window, and I saw the field marshal. I said, hey, Landon, come here. I says, what? I says, them brothers that you got back there? He says, yeah. I said, you hear him? I said, yeah, Chairman. He can take it. They ain't gonna hurt him. I says, get rid of them. I said, well, I said, they're the ones who he wants physical discipline from. I says, get rid of them. I went upstairs. I said, Connie, get the people for physical discipline. Connie, Louise, whoever, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. I got 6 sisters. I come walking back down. I said, this is your discipline committee. No. They sisters. I said, See, they gonna kick your ass, and I want them to kick your ass. You know, boom. I said, and I had a big 357 Magnum. I said, if you try to swing back around, I said, you see this Python Magnum I got here? Oh, and Connie, the reason I chose her, her older brothers, she's about 22 years old. They were prize fighters. They taught her to box. Connie come in there. I mean, she danced there, pop, and hit the brother, and then, wow, came upside his head, bang, and hit his head, boom, and I said, Connie! And everybody stopped. She said, what? She said, what, Chairman? I said, you can't hit in the head. Remember? Shoulders down. Oh, I'm sorry, sister. And then, wait a minute. The sister said, I'm sorry, brother. Well, and I said, now continue. And some of the sisters just hit something. But it was good in the sense that I had to measure and empower the sisters. You see, as human beings and members of the Black Panther Party, and you ain't gonna run over them. Anyway, that's just one example.
So, Art's gonna have a question, and then if anyone would like to ask a question quickly, please line up at the microphones in the center, and we'll get as many as we can.
I want to say that during People's Park in Berkeley in 1969, which was primarily white students and hippies like me, the Black Panther Party came to support People's Park. And that was an example The term now that people use is intersectionality. But it was an example of the broad coalition of progressive people that you wanted. And why did you do that? Why, you know?
Because it made sense. Now, you know, I had a problem with Brother Kwame Ture after he joined our organization. And we said prime minister, you know, and boom, the brothers, you know, we didn't put no. You see, I wanted and did create what I call multiple leadership. I wanted multiple leadership in my organization. You see what I mean? And you'd have to have it. I mean, in a city like Chicago, you have to have that leadership. You see, so that's what I was about. But more importantly, Kwame Ture began to oppose abroad in a television show. I went to the Scandinavian countries too. And then I saw this. And then I called up, I said, Kwame Ture, man, you saying that we shouldn't have any white mother country radicals helping us out? No. I said, man, you're wrong, brother. I said, you're going again. I said, we need a coalition operation in opposition to I said, anyway, brother, I said, why don't you think about resigning? My point, though, is you're not going to destroy. I didn't like that. My organization, we developed a thing where we had coalitions with some 39 different organizational groups. Half of these were with people of color organizations, all right, including the Asian Student Alliance, including the Iwakun and the Red Guards, which is a Chinese organization and Asian peoples, etc., the Young Lords, young Puerto Rican, Hispanic, Latino people, etc., and so on, and young Mexican Americans down the South, etc., and so on. We had coalitions with all these organizations. And I had a coalition with Dr. Martin Luther King. I had a coalition relationship with the NAACP with, what was his name at the time? I forget. Well, yeah, with him, right. He helped us put together the best legal team of lawyers all across the country once we got to talking. See, the coalition relationship, people in organization have progressive attitudes, they have resources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then when they launched the attack, I made it a point that we network with everybody who had an inkling of understanding that our struggle was all about civil rights, and let them know that the power structure has said, my organization is a threat to the internal security of America. Tell these people, whether it's some of the politicians, whoever, et cetera. And that was very, very important because you have a movement here. You know what I mean? It's not a movement saying, well, we're separating from the white man. And my argument is, say, okay, brothers, I understand why you say that, but what you gonna do, separate from Earth? He's white dude. What we gotta do is get some Underground Railroad type people, white folks, organized, you know, to get us out of it, help us get out of this stuff and get our situation. So we got some political power seats, and we stop. See, it's
I want to try to get some of the
you
some
get
of the
the
questions.
gist of where I'm coming from, of why, and you can make a distinction between a Ku Klux Klaner who will murder, shoot, and kill you, and dumbass Trump, etc. You can make a distinction between them. Wait a minute, between them and another white liberal person who's getting his ass beat by the power structure. Ronald Reagan sent everybody in the People's Park situation. He's had the National Guard, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And them young brothers, people with that People's Park, and they killed one or two of them, wounded 3 or 4 of them. You know, and they say, shit, police brutality 101, the Panthers are right. I'm just trying to say, that's power. Right. And that is what scared the power structure more than anything.
Right.
That we crossed those racial lines, that we crossed all that stuff, and we looked at the power and the needs of all the people and their liberation needs, et cetera, and so on. We understood that, you know, so it's become the class nature and our argument of where we were going and where we got to go. And that still has to happen today. We got to stick together, all of us over here, whether you're black, white, blue, red, green,
right.
yellow, or polka, we got to stick together in opposition to Trumpism. You see what I mean? We got to do that.
All right. So we have really just a few minutes, and I'm going to apologize to the folks in the back of the line, but we're going to go front, back, and we'll try to get through as many as possible. So please go for it.
Okay, going off the last question that you just asked, I think today we have a lot of issues with white allies and white activists claiming their white privilege but not doing anything about it. So what can we do for white allies to know that they have to be active and accountable for their issues?
All I can say is try to educate them as much as possible, and they have to make their choice. I mean, to be part of, you know what I mean? In the 60s, we had so many left people, young white folks, rich, what have you. I mean, I've never forgotten. I spoke at the University of California quite often. And I was speaking one day, and I came out, and we were going across the street to have lunch, and a young lady and her brother walks up, "Mr. Seale?" I says, "Yes. I love your speech and all your programs and things. And me and my brother, we would like to make a donation to you guys." I said, "Oh, yeah?" I said, "Oh, great. Come on." So anyway, we go to the lunch place, et cetera. So I start bragging about how Marlon Brando, Marlon Brando over a period of time had donated some $50,000-$60,000 to me in a 7-month period or something, what have you. I says, I got Marlon Brando. He donates to us too, and he gives $5,000, $3,000 whenever I need it. So I says, "How much would you guys like to donate?" I says, "Could you afford?" I'm being honest, like straightforward. "Could you afford $20,000? She says, "Oh no, I can give you a couple of $100,000. And I says, "What?" I says, "Wait a minute." She says, "Yeah, a couple of hundred." I says, "A couple of $100,000. I says, "Come on." I took her straight to our lawyer's office. Her and her brother. She donated $250,000.
Wow.
That was then. That was like what you could buy for $1 million today. You see, so you see what I was coming. My organization was something, and it started attracting people, movie stars, actors, and all kinds of people, and that was key. And when we got there, Charles Gary and them had taken up the legal stuff for the La Raza. The La Raza was Hispanic brothers and sisters living in San Francisco there, where they was having a little community cultural program and trying to set up for it. And 2 cops came by walking around trying to roust them. And one of the cops pulled his gun out, and then one of the young La Razas grabbed him, and another one grabbed him, and the other one was struggling and fighting with 3 or 4 others that was there, and the gun was still in the hands of the cop, and it went off and shot and killed the other cop. So here this lady was getting ready to donate. I says, "I want you to do something." Now the La Raza, we've been trying to help them raise funds. I says, "Now, they just knew there's 6 of these brothers." I says, "You gonna give me $250,000? I says, "Can you write a check for $25,000 for them and give it to Charles Gary?" She said, "Sure." Wow. And boom, and I says, "Now, you write the rest of the check," I says, "to Charles, and Charles will dole it out based on what we come back to get." So this was young white privilege who made that choice to help us out that way. And boom. And I got 1, 2, going down the road, $250,000 donations again. See, so imagine now, I'm organizing a political electoral machine. I'm teaching brothers and sisters that in your communities, I mean, we had a white privileged woman, and I ain't gonna even mention her name. Maybe I should mention her name.
Do it.
That she was a multimillionaire, righteous, hope to die, liberal. She'd already been supporting all kinds of organizations, et cetera, And boom, and, okay, her name was Lucy Montgomery out of Chicago, Illinois, the wife of Montgomery Ward, et cetera. And these are privileged people, but when they understood the relationship of what we're doing, what we're organizing, how we standing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean? So, boom. So when Bobby Rush did run after the party was over for alderman and Byrne, he had a backup. You see, a liberal backup, et cetera, and ultimately put him in the United States Congress. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff.
Right.
And anyway, go ahead.
All right, so we're just going to take one more from the back. I'm sorry for everybody else. The
hi.
back mic, yeah.
Hi, Diego O'Brien, junior finance major at Howard University from Montgomery County, Maryland. Good evening. HU, you know? So, good evening, Bobby Seale. I have a question. According to Ta-Nehisi Coates, Between the Word and Me, believing in an American dream requires us to be dreamers. And the American dream alludes to the unalienable rights from the Declaration of Independence that all men are created with the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. But is our denial of these rights through society's discrimination through justice system, police brutality, institutional discrepancy, gentrification, and oppression ever attainable through society's acceptance of us or our perseverance of our own recognition of our greatness? But a better question might be, how is this attainable? Because why does society need to accept our perseverance? So.
I couldn't half understand most of your question.
Okay.
Can you sum it
I
up
don't
quickly?
mean that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about it's me.
What I basically ask is our own success in society pertaining to us in our recognition of our own greatness, or is through society's acceptance of us and giving us more rights through social protests, is that going to lead to us further progress in our own communities?
So in a way, almost like, where does black power come from within or without?
Yeah.
What is he saying?
So like, where does black power come from? Does it come from...
Where does what?
Black power come from? Does it come from black folks recognizing their own power, or does it come from society recognizing that power?
When Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves in 5 states to fight in the war, boom, he recognized that he didn't want to lose this damn war. That's what he did, you know, and he realized from a military standpoint that I'm going to free these slaves because I can't, nobody, the northern young whites are not joining up with the military. So he freed the slaves and armed them, trained them and armed them, and they beat the Confederates. Boom, 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 boom. Now, he recognized under pressure the need to do this, you know what I mean? To take the labor force away from the South, and at the same time, and with the 13th Amendment that ended slavery, and then the 14th and the 15th Amendment, et cetera. So recognizing black power, but that only lasted 10 years, that Reconstruction period. When they dropped the Reconstruction period, what happens is that the white oligarchs took over the politics of things again, you know. So when you say black power, people's power, or empowerment, it's about us taking over those seats. And you're going to recognize, and if you got people in those political seats, and then to the degree that we get the right kind of programs in for our human liberation, you know what I mean? They have to recognize that we're serious about this. And if they going to come with guns to try to take it away from us again, we have to pick up some guns to defend ourselves, because you're defending our constitutional right. I'm not advocating violence. I'm advocating the right to self-defense if violence is perpetrated upon us. So it's a complex question there.
Yeah, and that's a really good complex answer, I think, to wrap up with, right? To think about black power and society, power within society. So again, I'm sorry for everyone that we cannot get to. We have like room restrictions in terms of time, and so we're gonna have to wrap it up. But thank you guys all for coming, and please join me again, and thank you, Mr. Bobby Seale.